We have called you to update you on some critical issues affecting the portfolio areas of science, technology, energy, and mining, and to provide a perspective on that. The People's National Party believes the absence of a minister with responsibility for these areas is affecting the operations of that ministry and is delaying critical areas of national importance. The Data Protection Bill, which was tabled in the House of Representatives late last year, was put before a joint select committee of Parliament. That joint select committee met on 8 occasions, with the last meeting being held in March of this year. Since then, no meeting has been held. The joint select committee was chaired by the then Minister Andrew Wheatley. The passage of the Data Protection Act was a prerequisite for the NIDS, which has now been passed. So the Data Protection Act should have been passed before NIDS. And the main reason of the main purpose of the Data Protection Act is to provide a legal and regulatory framework for the capture, storage, and management of an individual's personal data. So to give you a practical example, NIDS, which is passed and which is compulsory for every single Jamaican, requires every Jamaican to provide a fingerprint, a toe print, a vein pattern, an iris scan, plus other very sensitive personal information. In the absence of a Data Protection Act, how will this data be managed and stored? It means that there will be no protection against the misuse or abuse of this very sensitive information, given that there's no Data Protection Act. And we believe the main reason why the Data Protection Act has stalled in Parliament since the resignation of Minister Wheatley, there's really been no attention paid to this critical area of the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Energy. And we are exposing Jamaicans because the implementation of NIDS is going full speed ahead. And we are going to be exposing Jamaicans who will be required to provide this sensitive information to an environment where there is no protection whatsoever for this data. The second legislative area, which again has not been given any attention in the absence of a minister, is the Information and Technology Bill, the ICT bill. That bill and work on that started from when we were in office, should replace the Telecommunications Act, which is 17 years old, and will provide a framework for telecoms in this current environment. It should also provide the basis for the establishment of a single ICT regulator, taking aspects of the Spectrum Management Authority, the Broadcasting Commission, and the OUR. That bill should have been tabled in Parliament by the third quarter of this year. Hopefully, the projection was for the bill to be promulgated by the end of the fiscal year. Again, in the absence of a minister, there's been no action on that bill. Another critical area of national importance, which has been stalled due to the absence of a minister. And then the third area, another critical piece of legislation, relates to our Cybercrimes Act. When we updated the Cybercrimes Act in 2015, it has a provision that it must have a mandatory review after a 3-year period. That 3-year period is December next month, December 2018. And there is no indication that this bill is going to be put before Parliament, put before a joint select committee, and the appropriate consultations be undertaken so that the amendments can be made to the bill so that we ensure that all our pieces of legislation are consistent and up to date with the developments that are taking place in this industry. So once again, we want to call on the Prime Minister, who has been, in a sense, the caretaker for these critical areas of national importance, to appoint a minister, a full-time minister. It is unclear to us what the reasons for his reluctance to appoint someone, but 3 months in, after the resignation of then Minister Wheatley, what we're seeing is just a stagnation in critical areas within this ministry, which will affect the public of Jamaica and critical areas, industries, which are vital to Jamaica's development. I'm now going to turn over to my colleague, Mr. Paulwell, who will outline areas related to the mining and energy portfolio.
Thank you very much, Julian. Good afternoon, everybody. Members of the media will recall that at the start of July 2018, 4 months ago, the Prime Minister removed the energy portfolio from the then Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology, headed by Dr. Andrew Wheatley, and transferred it to the Office of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's decision came amidst great concern about allegations of corruption, nepotism, and cronyism at the state-owned oil refinery, Petrojam, as well as other agencies and statutory bodies under Dr. Wheatley. At that time, the Prime Minister made a number of commitments to the energy sector, including a major review of Petrojam, as well as fast-tracking the VDU project in light of the need for the refinery to produce cleaner products, with the imminent disappearance of much of the market for heavy fuel at JPS. You will recall JPS is switching to LNG at some of its plants. The opposition warned at the time that energy was too critical to be subsumed into the Office of the Prime Minister, which is already burdened with the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. After more than 100 days, energy issues have been relegated to the back burner, and the country has not been updated on the progress, if any, of the review being conducted by the Zaka Group, which was appointed by the Prime Minister on July 11, 2018. According to the Prime Minister then, there was urgent need for the review as, among other things, Petrojam was straying from policy guidelines and risking public funds. The opposition is extremely concerned over the state of the energy sector under the Prime Minister's watch, and in particular, the slow pace at which critical projects are moving. At the outset, I also want to point out that the Energy Council, which was set up by us in 2012 and supported by both parties and the entire private sector leadership, has not met since this government took office in February 2016. Neither Dr. Wheatley nor the Prime Minister has called a single meeting, and so the government is not benefiting from the input of the membership of that important council. We are calling on the Prime Minister to convene a meeting of the Energy Council as soon as practicable, so the objectives to which it is committed can be met. And indeed, there are members of the Energy Council who are lamenting the fact that grouses, including the matter of the hedge on our fuel, the continuing taxation on fuel that they believe is burdensome to their business and to in the important vacuum distillation unit project, and the need to advance it because of the short window between now and the end of next year, when the JPS is scheduled to bring online new LNG plants. Petrojam's viability will be seriously threatened if its output cannot be changed from almost half being HFO, for which there will be little market. The Prime Minister needs to give a status report on the project, for which there was a $100 million US allocation in the 2018-2019 estimates of expenditure. I warn again that if this project is not done and done within time, Petrojam will not continue to be viable. Another important part of our energy mix is renewables. Since this government took office, there has been no approvals for any new renewable energy project. All that we have been able to achieve in the realm of renewables started with the procurement of 115 megawatts of capacity during the period 2013 to 2014. Those projects are coming to a closure, and the aim was that as these are completed, new projects would have started, and we're looking at another 100 to 150 megawatts of renewable projects. Nothing has been said by this government of this, and we stand to lose the gains that we have made. Jamaica became the leading country in the Caribbean in relation to the use of wind, solar, and hydropower, and we are going to recede in the near future if something urgent is not done. And finally, the program to improve efficiency at the Jamaica Public Service Company, that is also languishing. The aim in lowering energy costs, or the objective to lower energy costs, was twofold. One was to deal with the fuel, and that was to be achieved through diversification, and we were able to take that to a substantial new level of success. But the other component was the grid and the inefficiencies that create tremendous burden for our consumers. Both technical and non-technical losses remain too high, and we were intended that by 2016, new focus will be placed on JPSCO to modernize and to become far more efficient. That ball has dropped. The energy portfolio needs attention. The Prime Minister is too sidetracked, and the country is now too overburdened with high energy prices for the present situation to continue. Yesterday in Parliament, I made mention of the fact that Asian Bunkering Services Limited, that they had filed for bankruptcy, and among the creditors was Petrojam. We are still being advised by international postings that the debt amounts to over $3 million. We are hearing locally that it is not that much and that it is 300,000, but the international posting that we have seen reveals a debt of over $3 million. I believe that if there isn't close attention by a minister to these and other issues, we are going to lose all those gains that we were able to achieve in the past, and in fact, we're going to be retarding much of the progress that was made. Thank you.
The final thing I would say before I turn over to questions is that the party is very anxious to get an update from the various state agencies that had undertaken investigations into the Ministry of Science, Energy, Technology. The Auditor General commenced investigations, MOCA commenced investigations, the Integrity Commission, which subsumes what used to be the Contractor General, also undertook investigations. We believe 6 months in, it is critical that the nation be given even an update to say where these agencies are with these reports, whether they are 50% complete, 80% complete, when these reports are going to be tabled in Parliament so that some closure can be brought to the issues at the ministry. We have seen in the media recently comments by the former minister speculating about what may or may not be in the Auditor General report. Those reports need to be made public so that the public can get a full understanding of the extent of the issues which existed at Petrojam, at NESL, at the Universal Service Fund, and at many other agencies under the ministry. So we are calling for an update on the status of the reports, and if those reports are complete, for those reports to be released to Parliament, certainly for the Auditor General and the Integrity Commission, who both operate as commissions of Parliament. We are open to questions from you. Just identify yourself and the media house that you represent.
Can you inform us as to what's next in terms, from your perspective, in terms of monitoring and tracking these developments? What can we expect from the national side?
Specifically, you're talking about the issues we raised about what's going on in the ministries? Certainly for us, as I said, I've identified very real risks that are apparent and that will exist for the Jamaican people. Because NIDS, as an example, the implementation of NIDS is going full steam ahead. When that pilot, which should start next year, comes around and your personal data is being sought, there is no legislative protection for how the data is going to be stored, how it is going to be managed, who will have access to it, whether your permission is going to be needed for someone to access your records. Now, that is something that we are going to continue to apply pressure on, because NITS should not have been passed before the Data Protection Act. And the only reason data protection has not been passed is because there is no leadership in the ministry. So we will continue to apply pressure to the government to give the appropriate attention to this, plus the other legislative areas that we have identified. And I think the question must be asked of the Prime Minister: what is the reason he's delaying appointing a minister in this area? What could be the reason? None of us know. And certainly no explanation has been provided to the public that almost 4 months later, he can't identify anyone within his rank of either MPs, senators, or anybody else to appoint. It really is beyond explanation, and it's not acceptable given the areas that are lagging and the impact that it is having negatively on the industries that operate under that ministry.
For my part, I intend next week in Parliament to table questions relating to the issues I have raised, and also to mention that next week the chairman of the PAAC will be tabling the PAAC's report to Parliament, and we are asking for the House Leader to enable us to do a debate in Parliament next week consequent on the tabling. Again, I intend in that debate to highlight these and other issues affecting the energy sector.
I mean, I tabled questions yesterday in Parliament surrounding the establishment of a cyber academy, which the government had indicated earlier this year that there were discussions with an Israeli company around a memorandum of understanding for the establishment of a cyber academy. We haven't been given any information about the state of that cyber academy, what the relationship is between the government of Jamaica and the Israeli company, what the scope of the cyber academy is going to be, who will manage and run this cyber academy. Nothing has been provided to the public at all. And again, we believe that because the portfolio does not have a dedicated minister who can focus on it, this is another area where there's just a deficiency of information. And it is such a critical area of national development that it requires attention and focus.
Good afternoon, Steve and Simmons from Nationwide News. It sounds as if you're calling for a cabinet shuffle somewhat. Indeed, one political commentator called for that and says it's time now, the Andrew Monet's-led administration is due a cabinet reshuffle. Do you agree?
That's really not our prerogative about whether he shuffles his cabinet or not. What we can say is the current configuration, where even before this, the current Prime Minister has more portfolios and has taken on more responsibility than any other Prime Minister in the history of the country. So when you add three critical areas, science, technology, and energy, it is clear, based on the issues we have outlined, that he cannot pay the kind of attention that is needed. So certainly for us, I won't comment on whether he should reshuffle or not. What we are saying clearly is that it requires dedicated focus, and somebody should be appointed who doesn't have the burden of thinking about all other national issues like he does.
Energy is the lifeblood of our economy. Yes, we have achieved certain successes in the past, but we can easily get back to crisis mode if the type of attention to some of the details is not dealt with. And the Prime Minister just cannot find that time that is needed to be allocated to monitor and to manage his portfolio. And that's the reason why our focus is on a specific minister to be dedicated to deal with these issues.